Hello, this is Ludwig Hitzman for GamesRadar Plus.
And I am Maxwell McGee.
I wanted to talk about the new game from Ubisoft's Tom Clancy division, namely Tom Clancy's The Division. Now, you describe this one as a whole bunch of things. You would say it's an MMO third-person cover-based shooter with customizable skill sets, progression, RPG elements, and they all add to something that's roughly in the same space as Destiny, except, not in space, but in fact a devastated New York City. But if you move away from all those labels and you focus on what you actually do in the game, I think you get a much better sense of what The Division is and what it's like to play it. So here are 10 things that we ended up doing in 2 hours with The Division.
Also important to note that because The Division takes place in sort of a biological outbreak in New York City, that outbreak actually transcended the fourth dimension and infected our poor editor, Lucas Sullivan, who went and saw this game. So Lucas, good luck with the radioactive spiders that are tunneling through your guts as we speak. All that aside, the first thing we notice in The Division is that you're not tunneled down any specific class. There are classes in the sense of there's a larger skill tree divided into support, aggression, and defense, and you can freely choose between skills from one tree, or you can mix and match between all three. And by your skill selection, you then define your own class for your character. Now, if you don't like what you pick, which is more than likely when you're first starting out, you can respec whenever you want, which is a really nice added bonus.
And of course, as you respec, you'll be wandering around a desolate New York City. Ubisoft really wants to capture the city with exacting detail in this game, but I think if you did it with a contemporary version of the city, it would only make it harder to believe as authentic. The landmarks are all going to be here, obviously, but I think ruining the city a little bit and making it deliberately chaotic and broken and dirty, all those things make it seem a little more believable in a way. There's also a lot of detail that suggests the continued presence of people, such as, that historical cultural artifact that you use to greet people in this game, the jumping jack.
Ah, yes.
Also, fact, I've only ever done jumping jacks in video games, and I'd probably die if I tried to do one right now.
I like to see that. You get about 5 jumping jacks in, and then you just explode all over the room. So when you wrap up with all those jumping jacks, the next thing you're probably going to want to do is trick out your weapon with some new mods. Naturally, this being a third-person cover-based shooter, you've got all sorts of scopes and sights and extended magazines and all sorts of equipment you can add onto your guns, which do actually change the look of your guns, in addition to giving you all sorts of new abilities. So for instance, the suppressor you equip is going to reduce the amount of threat your character gives off, basically pull less aggro. And then if you equip certain scopes, they can give you more XP when pulling off headshot kills and things like that. And you're going to be needing to pull off a lot of headshot kills when you go up against the tougher enemies in the game's factions.
I'm sorry, did you say there are fractions in this long Division game?
Oh my god, Ludwig, please don't start down this path.
I'm sorry. Anyway, so as what happens at the end of the world, you always end up fighting different factions, and you get to fight 3 of them in the Division. One faction is the group called the Rioters. You'll never guess what they do.
That's pretty straightforward. I'll accept that.
They're just so angry. There's also the Rikers, who are escaped convicts who live on Rikers Island, which is like a next generation.
I assumed these were going to be the Commander Rikers.
And you also get to deal with, they are actually called the Cleaners.
Oh my god.
Who are blue-collar custodians with flamethrowers.
Because in the future, janitors unite and rise up to fix humanity.
Exactly. So what's it like finding them? Well, the AI seems pretty solid, although some dudes do just stand out in the open, probably because they've given up on life, because life doesn't seem that great in the Division.
It really doesn't.
But we did notice that it takes a lot of shots to take down an enemy, which is either meant to reinforce the teamwork and the co-op element of the game, because you're supposed to work together, or it implies that the Division takes place in the same bullet sponge universe as Uncharted.
Oh, I see it now. So Uncharted to The Last of Us to The Division. It all makes sense. Establishing a base of operations. Basically, the Midtown South Precinct is the hot spot in post-apocalyptic New York City. Everybody's going to be moving in here, and you're going to get your very own instanced version of it. And this is basically going to be your base of operations. And when you first move in, it's going to be a big old dump. But you're going to be able to upgrade the medical, technical, and security wings of the precinct. And by doing that, you're going to unlock new skills for your character. There's also extra goodies like a crafting bench and NPCs for each of the different wings that are going to tell you more about the story of the game. And again, the entire area is instant, so you don't have to worry about, those cleaners coming in and burning all your stuff down.
And for number 6, spoiler alert, you're going to have a massive shootout on the court at Madison Square Garden.
I imagine you'll do it more than once.
As nice as it would be to simply explore the beautiful New York landmarks vicariously, you're not likely to mistake the Division for a pleasant walking tour, because these places are meant to be battlegrounds, and the Division has no shortage of main and side quests for you to do. Can you believe that they put main and side quests in this game?
My God, they've thought of everything.
So you'll have plenty to do while you're walking around, and I like the fact that you can actually use the landmarks not only as sort of gameplay elements in the combat, but you can just use them to navigate around the city and figure out where you'll go next.
Number 7 is perfecting your skill set. Now, our boy Lucas Sullivan, who went and played this game for a while, he really was taken with the medical tree, and he really liked combining the pulse ability, which lets you scan a huge radius and see enemies through walls and figure out where they are and get extra information on them, with the tech ability sticky bomb, so mixing and matching a little bit. And basically his 1-2 punch was scanning an area, identifying a large cluster of enemies, and then rolling in with those sticky bombs and making his presence felt. Other abilities include like the ballistic shield, which is a defensive buff. You've got deployable turrets. You can enhance cover to provide buffs to your allies. And then you've got this AoE heal, which, you know, the Division's set in the near future, but I'm not really sure what the lore explanation could be for something like that.
When in doubt, just say nanobots. Nanobots. It's always nanobots. You can learn more about how the world gets messed up by completing missions and finding information in the military drones lodged in skyscrapers. I guess those are literally story delivery vehicles.
The libraries of the future.
Events prior to the game unfurl as you find lore, and that's one of the things that you'll spend a lot of time doing. It's based heavily on theories and simulations of how the US would cope with an extreme biological outbreak, and according to this game, not very well at all.
Also, according to that simulation, not very well at all if you check out the Wikipedia page. So for number 9, we're going to talk about entering the Dark Zone.
Sounds scary.
This is basically PvP in the Division, and as Lucas describes it, it's the Wild West of New York City. And by Wild West, he seems to mean terrifying nightmare tunnels where people just run around and murder each other constantly. In these like everything goes areas, you're basically going in. You're putting a bounty on yourself by attacking other players, collecting supplies, and trying to get the hell out of there before everyone swarms and kills you. Basically, by killing the other players in these PvP zones and collecting loot, you draw a whole bunch of attention to yourself, and you eventually have to carry all that loot to an extraction point where you wait for a helicopter and just try to hold your own against the onslaught of other players who want to steal your things.
And that, of course, leads to the 10th point, and this is the part that really intrigues me. This is why I agreed to do this video for free.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Your going rate's pretty steep, I'm not gonna lie.
So your teammates are pretty likely to die during this extraction. Like, you have this exciting moment where you're trying to escape the Dark Zone with all the stuff that you've got, and some of your teammates are full, and you'll have to fight back. And I think, given the connection that you have with loot, i.e. stuff in a video game that you really want, and the fact that your teammates have worked really hard to get you that far and they die, you'll just have this emotional response and try to take out enemies as quickly as possible, usually via execution style. And I think these moments are what will define the Division ultimately and make it a little different than other games that are sort of operating in the same space. As we said before, it's a little bit like Destiny, but this kind of thing I think is what will draw people in.
I really wonder how it's gonna play out. Like, if me and my buddies go into the Dark Zone, we collect all this loot, we try to get the hell out of there, 2 of them die, and I abscond with the potato sacks with $signs full of loot. Like, how does that get divided up later?
I think potatoes are actually the currency in the Division. That's what people are.
Oh yeah. I mean, you gotta have, you know, your complex carbohydrates, son. So the Division's coming out on Xbox One, PS4, and PC on March 8th, and we're gonna keep on covering it here at GamesRadar Plus, so be sure to head on over to the website to check out all the latest coverage and look us up on YouTube.
You really didn't like that long Division joke?
You really gotta stop, man.